Hey guys, it's Swigs. For my last video, I had modded my Psykanium so that it would be a more productive environment to test and gather footage. Honestly, after doing so, it really became the training grounds I always wanted the Psykanium to be, and while using it, I was able to practice riskier setups without feeling like I would be tossing the game for 3 other people. I'm currently working on an Eviscerator guide in the background, and this has been a ton of help in testing different setups. The mod in question was Creature Spawner, which was made by Osimon, and you should all really check it out if you're interested in modding. There are a lot of great mods supported by the community, and the process is fairly painless once you know what to do. There's a lot of good quality of life add-ons, and Fatshark is open on its modding policies, stating that as long as it doesn't affect or invalidate somebody else's gameplay, it's a-okay. Now, this Creature Spawner mod didn't just provide me a testing grounds for fighting enemies in-game. It's also the keys to the kingdom for all hostile entity types that are hosted on the game client. And by scrolling through the options, you can view all of the in-game designation keys for each enemy type. One difficulty is that the naming system doesn't use any of the localized text or conventions that we're used to. So we aren't dealing with scabs or dregs anymore, but instead renegades and cultists. And it takes some getting used to while sifting through all the keys that we have available. But since we can spawn literally anything with this platform, I wanted to peruse the boss options and notice there were 2 Plague Ogryn types in-game. There are the Plague Ogryns that we all know and love, and then there's the Plague Ogryn Sprayer. Spawning it in, it has a unique look and a pretty gnarly triple barrel cannon embedded where its hand once was. These barrels, or I suppose nozzles, look to be fed by tubes burrowed through its flesh, connecting to a pressurized tank on its back. While its body is certainly twisted beyond recognition, it's actually significantly less rotten in comparison with its Plague Ogryn sibling, whose skin is so rancid and rotted that their guts are just spilling out in front of them. While it's known in-game by its key Plague Ogryn Sprayer, if marked, it bears a localization text, Tox Ogryn, which suggests that its spray would be similar to that of the Tox Flamers. Disappointingly, when I turned off invisibility and invincibility, it had all the same behaviors and animations of the original, so while its model was fully realized, more or less, the enemy wasn't completely finished yet. It's not entirely clear if the Tox Ogryn was then a discarded prototype of the Plague Ogryn and was simplified before release, or if it's a true second variant which just hasn't been finished or polished enough to be included in the game. It also could have been that the Tox Ogryn spray was too similar to the Beast of Nurgle's vomit attack, and they cut the Tox Ogryn for feeling a bit too derivative. But personally, I would love a boss battle against a Tox Ogryn and them covering the area with devastating pools of toxic corruption, and it would be a really cool mix-up that you'd have to pay attention to. And with the pressurized tank on its back, it's a perfect opportunity for another unique weak point. The tank could even possess its own pool of hit points, resulting in a devastating explosion after enough damage, potentially rendering the Ogryn unable to use its range attack options anymore, if it would even survive the blast. But this wasn't the only thing lurking around in our game files. And after finding this example, I certainly had to dig with a fine-tooth comb through all the options available to see what else hasn't made an appearance yet. Another, though certainly less finished enemy type, was under the key Cultist Grenadier. And it's definitely not finished yet, but it's certainly distinct in what we do have from its Scab Bomber equivalent. While its model is missing some pretty glaring chunks from it, if we turn off our invisibility again, it actually has animations and behaviors associated with it. These animations are clearly ripped from the Scab Bomber, but the model for the grenade itself is actually distinct, and it's less of a true munition and more of an improvised chemical explosive. This matches with its localized text, which is revealed again by marking as a Dreg Tox Bomber. Again, it's always possible that this was a discarded prototype, especially in its current state, but it's also possible Fatshark didn't want to crowd the roster with 2 bomber enemy types. But there's a chance that they could eventually release both versions, as since their bombs share different models, they would likely share different plans for unique effects. It could be that the Tox Bomber's explosive would be a corruption version of the Scab Bombers, but it might not even be an area of denial and instead be a single instance of splash damage, causing more damage to nearby players immediately than relying on you being stuck in its area of effect. And it could even have a temporary corrosive damage associated with it, which causes additional damage over time. And the last one I found, I think it's the most curious of them all, particularly because it's missing its entire model. Under the key Chaos Spawn, it doesn't have any mesh or skeleton associated with it, instead spawning a cloud of flies which hovers over its point of spawn. Its spawn is so broken that it has an error message attached to it, so whatever assets are needed are missing to the point of it being rendered completely inert. Which is saying something when we were looking at the Dreg Tox Bomber. But the name itself, Chaos Spawn, would suggest that it would be a 40k Darktide port of the Chaos Spawn from Vermintide, which in both universes would behave pretty similarly. If you're not familiar with Chaos Spawn, these abominations are an amalgamation of mutations which have rendered the hosts a grotesque collection of tentacles, claws, and whatever other gifts were quote-unquote bestowed upon them by the Chaos powers. While baseline, we would certainly expect a straightforward port from Vermintide, I wonder if they had any additional plans to make this beast more unique and bear more marks relating it to Nurgle. Since Chaos Spawn are essentially known for being a chaotic collection of horribly mutated limbs, their construction and gameplay are essentially limitless in design. But with no true official word on this, they may have no plans for the Chaos Spawn to make an appearance, and its entry here may just be a leftover from development, potentially being brought over in part from transitioning a Vermintide platform into what we know now as Darktide. Personally, I really hope these new enemies come through, since any new enemies mean new potential challenges. And I'd also like to see our enemy roster grow so that we get to the point where even certain missions have unique pools of enemies, with some enemy types being exclusive to only a select choice of missions. This would fit really well into more demonic enemy types, infesting that mysterious Dead Hive city that our characters have been murmuring about in-game. And as we tear deeper into this infestation, I definitely want to unveil more dangerous and hideous abominations to slay in the name of the Emperor. But if none of these end up making the cut, I do feel pretty confident that we'll be facing some new foes one day. And if we ever do crack into what lies below this fabled Hive City graveyard, I think it'll be worthy of a good fight. But that's all for this video, folks. If you liked the video, leave a like. Comment if I missed anything. Have a great day. See ya!